We'll take a shot at a new method for trying to record videos to help you guys out. Okay, so this is our homework, and I'll try and solve as quick as I can so the movie's not too long. What we want you to notice here is the question, and that is find the zeros of the following quadratics. In this case, we have a parabola number 56. It's graphed. And the zeros are simply right there and right there, right where it crosses the x-axis. We call them the zeros because whatever this quadratic function is, y equals x squared plus bx plus c, the question we're trying to solve is what makes this function, what makes the y equal 0. So we call these points the zeros. The solutions are simply what x equals. X equals 1 is one of the zeros, and x equals, it looks like, negative 6 is the other zero. So those are the zeros of the function. That's all you had to do for number 56. Alright. Next up, we've got number 57. Again, the function is graphed for us. So let's take a look at this function. Right here's a 0. That looks like x equals 3. And here's a 0, x equals negative 1. It has two solutions, and there they are. Scrolling down, our next function, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 5. We're solving by graphing, so this is when we're going to use the graphing calculator. So we go to y equals, and we're just going to type in the equation, x squared minus 6x plus 5. And we will hit zoom and choose 6. Our standard zoom is the best place to go. Okay, we can see on our graph right here, it looks like, and let's see if I can blow this up at all. It's going to be hard to kind of see on the screen, but it looks like right there is one of our zeros. Let me make that a little bit smaller pen, and maybe you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Looks like one of our zeros is right there at negative 1, and it looks like the other one is at 4. Okay. Now we can't just look at it and be guaranteed that those are the zeros for that function, but what we can do is use our calculator and we can test those. So we think negative 1 is the solution, so by hitting trace, typing in negative 1, you'll notice up here it puts in a negative 1, and then hitting enter. It tells us, oh, I shouldn't have hit negative 1. Negative 1's over here. Sorry. By typing in 1, oh, I wasn't in trace mode, so I'm going to go back to my graph. I'm going to hit trace. I'm going to type in 1 for x, and I'm going to hit enter. It does verify right here that, let me circle that again for you. It verifies right there that y is equal to 0. Okay. Let's see if we can find that other one. So we're still in trace mode, and I think my other one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think my other 0 is at 5, so I'll type in 5, I'll hit enter, and there is another 0. So 1 and 5 are indeed the 0, so we simply say x equals 1 and x equals 5 are the solutions. Okay, let's go to our next equation. Again, same directions. Solve this by graphing. So go back to y equals. We'll clear out that function. The new function is negative x squared. That tells us it opens down. Then it's plus 3x, then plus 10. Again, we'll remember to hit zoom 6 to hopefully get this in a good picture or a good window to look at. Okay. Again, looking at this graph, I would say I've got a 0 here at x equals, it looks like negative 2, and I've got a 0 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like x equals 5, I think. Okay, let's clear that writing out and let's check that. Okay, so I'll again hit trace, And I'll type in -2 and test to see if that's a 0. Indeed it is, so -2 is one of my solutions. And I will type in my other choice, I think it's 5, hit enter, and it is. So -2 and 5 are my solutions. Okay, so we just put x equals -2 and x equals 5. Let's try the next one. You can see once you get the hang of this, these are pretty quick to find your zeros with the graphing calculator or whatever grapher you use. Next one is x squared plus 6x. I know this one's going to open up because it's a positive x squared, or it's a positive in front of the x squared. And I'll put 9. So there's my equation. I zoom 6 it again. Hopefully. There we go. Zoom 6. Ooh, this one does something funny right here, and I want to get a closer look at that. So I'm going to hit zoom and zoom in on it. So I choose zoom, I choose zoom in number 2. Okay. Now you notice it didn't change the view at all. That's because I have to tell it where I want to zoom in on. So I'm going to move my cursor over to that point of interest. I'll move it up a little bit. So there's my cursor. If you can see it, it is right there, and that's what I'm moving around a little bit. I'm going to put it down there where my curve is interesting. Oops, discard that. Moving that cursor down, and then I'll hit enter again. So I hit zoom in, I move my cursor to where I want to zoom in at, and I hit enter again. And it looks like this graph just touches the x-axis at -3, I believe. And I'm guessing -3 because I'm looking at my x value here. It says the cursor's at -2.97 right now. I'm going to hit trace. I'm going to type in -3 to see if that is indeed a 0 value for the y. And it is, so this equation has one solution. It is x equals -3. That's number 60. Let's move right along. Let's go to 61. Notice this one's written in function notation, but that doesn't matter. That just means y equals still. So I type in x squared plus x minus 12. Hit zoom 6. And let's take a look at this guy. And clearly I've mistyped something, it looks like. Doesn't look very parabolic to me. Let's check it. X squared plus x minus 12. Hit zoom 6 again. Doesn't look very good. It looks like it goes right through 0. I'm going to zoom out, see if I get a different view of it. There's my parabola. So that was just 1 0 that I could see. So I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit to see if I can tell what that is. So hit zoom, and I'll choose number 2, zoom in. My cursor is blinking right at one of the intercepts. Looks like 0 0 is one of them. But for 61, 0 0 is clearly not a solution. Let me check that equation again. X squared plus x, I think I've hit the wrong minus sign. Let's try that minus sign, which means minus 12, not times -12. And I'll hit zoom 6 once more. That looks more like a regular parabola. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like it goes through -4 and 3, so I'm going to check those out. I'll check the -4. That's a 0, so there's one of my solutions. I'll check the 3. 3 is one of my solutions, so I'm good there. Next one, 62. Y equals, I'll hit clear. And I'll go x squared plus x. This time I'll hit the, plus 2x for 62. Plus 2x plus 4. There you go, and I'll hit zoom 6. Graph this one. This one's kind of a curious graph. Let's take a look at it a little bit more. You notice in this graph, here is the x-axis right there. This parabola never gets down to that x-axis. It never crosses it. For right now, we're saying that has no solutions, but technically it does. They are just what we call imaginary solutions or imaginary roots. For right now, you can just say it does not have solutions or has no real solutions. Next up is number 63. 63, we've got 2x squared plus 5x, 5x plus 2. Alright, I'll hit zoom 6 on that. It's kind of hard to tell what those are, so I'm going to make a zoom again. This time I'm going to do a zoom box, number 1. Zoom box allows me to put a box around what I'd like to zoom in on. Okay, so it gives me a region of the window. So I'm going to make sure those zeros are inside that box. So I've chosen a corner up here and hit enter. And then I'm going to arrow down, then arrow over, holding down that button now. And so I'm going to zoom in just on that section right there. So this one looks like -2, and let's just move our cursor over to that spot. Looks like -2 is probably a solution. So I'm going to hit trace. I'm going to type in -2. I'm going to hit enter and see if it is. So there's one of my zeros. This one's right in between, so I could trace over there and find it, but I want to show you another technique to find that 0 right there. I'm going to hit second calc. Okay, and I'm going to choose number 2, which finds zeros for me. And it says get on the left hand side. Now you have to be a little bit careful here. What I want to do is think about this being a vertical line that goes right through that 0. You can see the cursor is sitting right here, and right now that cursor is on the left hand side of the 0 of that vertical line I drew, but it's not very close to it. In fact, it's over by the left hand 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that cursor way over here. Think about where that vertical line was. Now I want to get close to this 0, but I want to stay on the left hand side of that vertical line. Okay, so I'm clearly on the left hand side of the vertical line. This is the left hand side of that 0. And that's what it's asking for right here. It says, what's the left boundary or left-hand side of that? And I tell it enter. And you'll notice it puts a little triangle up here at the top. That's saying that's where you've put the left-hand boundary. Now it says for the right boundary, and I'm going to move my cursor to the right of where that vertical line was. Okay, I'm clearly right of that 0 now, right of where that vertical line was, and I hit enter. Now look at those two arrows. They're saying the 0 is somewhere in there. If I were to draw that vertical line back in there, you'd actually see that my 0 sits in between that arrow right there and the arrow right here. Okay, and that's what I want it to do. I want my 0 to be pinned down. Okay, that's what the guess, our final movement is. We say, okay, now I'm going to guess and tell it right about where it's at. And I hit enter. And it says, hey, that 0 is at -0.5, and you can see why it's exactly 0. So -2 is one of my zeros, and -0.5. And finally, number 64, I'll go back to y equals. I'll clear out my equation. Negative, which means it's upside down, or opens downward, 3x squared plus 11x plus 4. And I'll hit zoom 6 and take a look at the final zeros. Uh-oh. This one looks pretty easy to read. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to test that out and hit trace 4. Enter. That is indeed one of my answers. This one, let's zoom in on it. I'll choose number 2, zoom in. I'll move my cursor so it's over by that 0. And I'll hit enter again to zoom in just on that region. Okay, that is somewhere between 0 and -1. So I'm going to use my find 0 feature again. I'll go second, calculate, and I'll choose number 2. Okay. Now as for the left bound, I can't even see where my cursor's at. It says my cursor's at -0.15. There's my cursor. Okay, I'm moving it below it because below moves it left of that 0. Now I'm going to move it to the right, which moves it above it, but moves it more importantly right of that 0. There's the 0. My cursor is now right of it. And then finally I'll make my guess, coming right back towards where the 0 is. You can see those two little arrows up here pinning the 0 down in between. And I hit enter. And it tells me I get negative 0.3 repeating. So my 0 is going to be at x equals negative 1/3. And that's all you had to do for all of your homework. Let's hope this all worked out for us, and we should be good to go.